All right, so we've ticked over to 12:30, so we'll get started. So welcome everyone who I haven't said hello to, and Happy New Year. So this is the first time I've personally run something like this, so potentially we'll have some little problems along the way, but we'll work through them as we go. All right, so let's get straight into it. I'll just get my face up here so you can see who I am. You probably will see me on the messenger thing anyway. Okay, so basically I've got so many screens here, I keep on turning sideways, but so what we're going to be going through, I'll just give you a quick introduction of the structure that I've planned. So each time we're running a session, it will be 20 to 30 minutes long. They're all recorded and I'll make that available to you somehow. I haven't worked out exactly how yet, so if you can't make it or you just want to go back over something, it's there. And if you've got questions, I'm quite happy at the moment for you just to physically speak up, but if that's not working, there's a hand raise somewhere within Zoom. Now, given I'm on two screens, I may not see it, so if you do that and I don't answer, just physically speak up and I'll hear you. So this week we're going to cover what is bonsai, how to select your tree, the challenge rules, how we're going to share photos, and then next week, which I think if my memory's right, Tim is actually running, Tim Wilson, we'll be covering slip potting, which is basically upgrading your pot size without disturbing the plant, and what you'll physically need to keep on going. We'll cover a bit more of that during this. So I'll have a question and answer at the end of each session, or we'll just see how we go. You can ask as we're going along now. So what is bonsai? So there's some misconception of what bonsai is. So taking a definition from off the web, it's the art of growing ornamental, artificially dwarfed varieties of trees and shrubs in pots. So the key there, I think, is the trees and shrubs. However, that's not always the case. There's a lot of people who will do succulents such as jade, which I've got a lot of here, which I call bonsai, but going by that definition, they're not, but they still look very nice. And the physical pot isn't necessarily a really small pot. If you look at some of the bonsai around the world, their pots are huge. And the trees can even be into the order of meters tall. So growing the bonsai is to create a miniaturized but realistic representation of nature from the tree. What we'll be doing at this stage is something called pre-bonsai, which is basically the stage before it looks mature. So I just want to bring up a couple of examples here of what is bonsai. So I've got a couple of my trees here. And in my collection of about 30 trees, I've only got two that I would truly call bonsai at this stage. So one of them is this juniper. And the reason that I would call this a bonsai, although I have had someone suggest that maybe it still needs a bit more maturing, is if you were to look at this as a full-size tree, it's got the proportion of the thick trunk. The upper branches are quite well established and thick. They're not thin, tiny little branches. I've got some intentional dead wood where I've created bits that have died off. So it has the appearance of a mature tree. I'll just stick that one to the side. And then this one, which is currently my favorite, my olive. So again, we've got a good proportion of the thickness of the upper branches to the trunk size. The dead wood isn't essential, but it does add the illusion of the trees had a bit of a hard life and parts of them have died off. So sometimes this happens naturally. In this case, I've intentionally killed off these top parts by somewhere in there, just chopping in and removing all of the cambium, so it will intentionally die off. So those are the only two out of my collection that I would actually call bonsai. In pre-bonsai, so that one there, I'm still trying to pull down the branches, but a lot of people would say that, you know, it's got a reasonably thick trunk. This is the sort of thing you might get from a Bunnings type shop as a bonsai. Probably wouldn't even have a trunk that thick. But because these branches are not proportional, at this stage, it's a pre-bonsai. However, a lot of people would be very happy if I prune this up to have that and call it their bonsai. I could probably sell that plant as is for a good $100 if I pruned it up. So people would be happy with that. This one here was basically a plant like we'll be working on for this challenge about 8 months ago. And you can see that, you know, I'm fattening up the base and getting some shape. So this is getting towards it. Needs another prune, but I'll just leave that for another month or two before I do that. So these are all examples of pre-bonsai over in this area here. So that's just, again, this was literally a $5 tube stock thrown in a pot. Again, you can do that, $3 pot, $5 tube stock, and probably, given a very short time, sell that for $30, $40. But in real terms, it's not what I would call bonsai. Some people may disagree with me. So that's just a bit of an idea of, we'll be working on pre-bonsai. And that's where most of us start off with. We either go and buy something from a shop or get given a gift at Christmas time, which a lot of people have received. And it's called a bonsai when they sell it, but in true terms, it hasn't got that maturity that makes it look like a real tree. All right, so I'll just jump back a slide here. So the main part of this week's thing is about selecting a tree. Now, if you've already gone out and got a tree, as long as it meets what we're considering the sizing for this, that's okay. But we'll basically run you through what we're looking for. So for this challenge, your tree should be an Australian native shrub or tree. I would recommend getting one that has a specified larger upper size, so 2 meters or so for a shrub, bigger for a tree, because they'll mature faster. You'll get a lot more short-term growth happening in it. Given that we're only doing this for 3 months, we're not going to get a lot of growth over the summer season. So most of this will be about shaping. So having something with a little bit of height, doesn't have to be massive, but is a good start. We're going to look at selecting something that has a bit of shape, which is, in our terms, we call it movement, at the base of the tree. And I'll also show you a video in a moment where we test the flexibility, which will help you when you're trying to shape a young tree. Sometimes their wood will crack extremely hard, easily. Others will be quite flexible. So, and then we'll take a quick look at the roots and how to try and choose something with roots. That's a little bit harder because you've got to dig into the plant and not necessarily something you can do in a nursery. But so let me just throw a video up here and we'll run you through when I recently went to a nursery. Then I'll come back and show you some plants that I have.
So when you're looking to choose a plant, you basically want to have a look primarily at the base of them and look for something that has a bit of character, like this one. No, probably not, but so anything that's just straight is boring. So that one's got some potential. This one here, I would actually chop that whole branch off, so this upward going branch, and make this my new front. And that would be an interesting start to a tree. This one here, again, it's got lots of low down branches, so this would probably get rejected by most as a tree, but for us, we can chop those branches off or even leave them there to let it thicken up the trunk. But it's got some nice choices. It's a bit hard to see in here, but some nice choices there of different branches. So with that one, I could use this branch off here and lose that, so this would become my main trunk. So yeah, don't be scared to get in with your finger or something and just take a bit of the topsoil back and see where those roots are, because the better those top roots are, the more aged your tree is going to look. So you obviously don't want to dig too deep when it's in the nursery, but I can see that has a couple of nice top roots there. So if I went down a little bit further, I'd probably find some others. So that's another good thing to be looking for.
Myself. So these 3 trees I have here are 3 that I picked up at the nursery on that day. And basically what we're looking at for this challenge is something that is in a 140 millimeter pot, so 140 or 14 centimeters across the top or smaller. And the reason I chose this one, see if I can, is we've got some nice movement already happening in the trunk there. You can see it's already got some bends happening in it. So I know that I've already got something to work with. Now, I think it's in the next video, but I go through and I physically test how much can I bend this without it snapping. So this is a reasonably flexible tree. I can get a fair bit of bending on that, whereas some I would go and do that and they would be quite brittle. So we're looking for trees that have, if it's a shrub, a lot of low down growth at the bottom, partly because in the longer term that can be used to help thicken up the base. Or if it's a tree, something that's already got some flow in the trunk. It's not just dead straight and then your branches up high. So often the more rejected trees for most people are what's good for us. This one here is actually from a reject pile. So that first one there I showed you was a $14, $15 tree, Belair Nursery. This was a $6 reject. So you can see it's already got a bit of dieback on it. It's a bit of a risk buying this, but at $6, it doesn't really worry me if it dies off. But what I like about this is it's growing, because it's really struggled already, it's already got its movement happening. So even though I've got some dead branches here, further up those same branches, I've got growth. So I know that's going to recover given time. So I can work with this and basically take off some of this lower stuff and just work that main branch there. And straight away, I've got a nice shape happening for a tree. So don't be put off by the fact that the tree may look like it's in really terrible condition. So long as you've got a green enough thumb that you can keep them alive, sometimes these can be the most beautiful trees that you're going to find. And the last one I grabbed, so I'm going to work on all 3 of these during the challenge, is this, which is, I think it was a tea tree, lemon-scented tea tree. And basically, again, when they're really young, $5 tube stock, you can bend them. This one is a bigger tree, would snap quite easily. I can feel by that. But given that this is very young, I can work this quite easily and get some interesting shape in it. And then as it grows, obviously that shape's going to continue to develop within it and you can start to work your branches out. So the selecting of the tree is obviously the starting point. And yeah, trying to get something that already has a reasonable amount of movement is quite important. I'll dig down on this one in a moment and we'll have a look at the roots a bit, but I'll just drop this other video probably.
So it's often good to choose a shrub, but I'm just going to look at a tree here. So these have just caught my eye. These are Guinness lemon and lime. And just looking through the bases, so they're a $15.50 tree. The one that happened to be at the front already has some quite nice movement in it. So I've got that trunk that's sort of coming out there, and this little bit where it's been chopped will gradually disappear. And the other thing that I'm doing is just checking how much can I bend that? How much movement can I get? So that I can get quite a bit of movement. And again, just looking at the roots and the barry. So I'm not feeling a lot on this one at this depth, but that doesn't really matter. It's just a bonus if we get a good one. So yeah, there's nothing much on that one, but if you happen to find one that's got a choice of 2 plants and they've both got good movement, Getting the nabari is just a bonus.
So I use this tub for my bonsai work, which was just a plastic laundry tub, got a turntable, just makes it easy to work on the plants. I'll make some room for it here. And I've just got a chopstick from a Chinese takeaway. I go through a lot of these because they're really good for digging around. So what I'm going to do is try and get it all in view. Where's the camera view there? Let's move this camera slightly. So what I do while I'm in nursery, so I'd normally do this with my fingers, is just sort of get in and try and uncover some of that top layer. So obviously in a nursery, you don't want to dig it all out on the ground, but I'll literally just get in and take a little bit of a look and see how far down I can go without uncovering everything. And I haven't looked into this one properly, but I'm basically just trying to find if there's any radial roots down there. So when I'm selecting a plant, if you had two that you really like, the one with the radial roots is the one that's probably the better choice. Now, I'm not finding any going down a couple of centimeters on this. That's about as far as I would normally go in a nursery. But basically, let's untangle the camera. What I'm looking for there, let's get that out of the way. It's very hard to see on camera, but I'm trying to see if any of those roots appear at the bottom are coming outward around the edges. Now, if I can find ones that are doing that, in the longer term, that's going to add maturity look to the tree. So you'll be able to bring those roots to the surface. So I would literally dig down until I find them, and that will give me more trunk. So already on this tree would have given me 1.5, 2 centimeters extra trunk height. But if we can get down to those roots, that's going to make a nicer tree straight off rather than one that doesn't have them. Now, it doesn't look like I've hit the jackpot on that one, but the tree itself is still a nice starting point for me for having a bit of movement in it. So doing the same on this one here, bit of moss on that one. So I would just have a bit of a dig around. And sometimes you'll find a really, really nice root structure, and that will be a good indicator that it's likely to be a good future bonsai. So this doesn't really harm it so long as you don't expose too much root. If you do this in the nursery, have somewhere where you can sort of scrape the soil so you can put it back in after, because they don't really appreciate you taking all the soil out of their trees. But I'm not scared to go in and have a bit of a scratch around. So again, going down a little bit, I haven't found anything on that, but I suspect I actually will a little bit deeper because I'm getting some very fine roots appearing. So I suspect not too much deeper, I'm going to find that I have some decent roots inside that one. Okay. So that's basically what we do. Yeah.
Can I just ask, with that first one that didn't have great roots,
yep,
would you be tempted like to wrap that at, say, in sphagnum moss as you repot it to see if you could grow more roots towards the top, or just keep going until you work your way down the tree?
No, I next week when we do slip potting, we'll talk a bit more about this, but I would basically be uncovering just a little bit of this. So we can see by the fact I've just pulled this out of the pot, I don't want to disturb those lower roots, but I can see there's not a lot happening up here. I can work a fair bit of this without being too worried, but if you're not sure of it, don't go digging real deep, because at this time of year, being hot, if you uncover too much of your roots, you will kill your tree. So it's something that, yeah, don't go down. Like, I'm not going to go any deeper than what I have there. I found a very fine root, but later on when we have started to establish the tree, we can dig a bit deeper, but we're going to do that once the seasons have moved a little bit from the hot part of the summer and starting to cool off. At the moment, it would be very dangerous to do that because it's a pretty good chance we'll kill this tree. Okay. Sphagnum moss is a bit of a miracle thing. I personally don't have any, but it will grow roots quickly. I'm not sure about getting surface roots with sphagnum moss, but it may well be something that you could do. It certainly won't harm the plant. So yeah, feel free to try that if that's something you want to try. A lot of, for me, bonsai is a lot of experimenting. It's not, these are the rules. I just get in there and do it. You will lose a few trees. So when you start off, don't buy ridiculously expensive trees. Buy something that's low cost that you can experiment with, and it's not going to cause too many tears if it dies on you. I've probably killed just this year 5 or so trees, some of which were straight out of the ground where I've collected them from friends' houses when they were renovating their garden, some of them from nurseries. It happens. We're doing some pretty drastic things to the trees, and I can be a little bit impatient, so I try to push them harder than I probably should. Sometimes I crack branches and things like that, and that doesn't necessarily kill the tree, but it does certainly change your plans for it. So yeah, it is meant to be a patience game, but I'm sometimes not as patient as I need to be. All right, so any other questions on that actual selection? Because that'll be what we need you to go away and do during this week, is go and find yourself a tree. I'll go through the criteria in the next slide, but any questions before I move on?
Yeah, did you say something 90 centimetres or a metre height before in the beginning?
If I was looking for a shrub, I would look for one that when it says maximum height, so when we look at the tag here, I don't think it says on that tag.
Something that grows to maximum height.
Yeah, not starting
not trying to buy a shrub that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, how could we get that and 14 metre maximum pot?
So this one here says it grows up to, you can't see it on the contrast of that, but up to 2 meters, 1.5 to 2 meters tall by 1 to 2 wide. So in a shrub, which this one is, that's a pretty good sort of height if you want to fast track it. If you're happy to go slower, then that doesn't really matter. They'll get there eventually. But for what we're trying to do here, I'd suggest going for something that will naturally grow a little bit faster. Doesn't mean it necessarily will in the time frame we've got, but it's just a bit of an indicative thing that it's going to grow up as a faster tree than some. This one, which is a tree, has a height of 5 to 8 meters if I just let it go. So again, it's one that's probably going to try and grow reasonably quickly given the right conditions. So that's just something that I sort of look at. If I was to buy a tree that only had a maximum height of 2 meters, it's probably going to be a very long time before I get anything established out of it. Okay. I'm not even sure what this one grows to. It doesn't say on that tag, but I don't think that one actually grows very high, but I just bought it as an example. Any other questions on that? No. Okay. So the rules when you're going out and selecting your plants. So to try and make this that we're all working on roughly the same platform, we want you to get a pot that is no bigger than the 14 centimetres, so 14 across the top, which is pretty common nursery stock. Try to be under the $20 price barrier. Look in the specials area. You can often get a bigger tree that's discounted because maybe the top got snapped off or something like that, which we probably chop off anyway, so that's all good for us. Must be an Australian native, so don't go out grabbing yourself a Japanese maple or something like that. We're purely working with Australian natives for this particular challenge. And the judging of this, a lot of people have been asking about the pots. We're not going to be looking at the pots at all, and in fact we'll recommend that you don't go for a small pot because that's going to stunt your tree from day one. So nearly all of my trees are still in nursery pots. It basically will help your tree to grow faster, And we can still get all of the structure and everything that makes it look like a bonsai without having to go for that pot. So when we go through and do the judging on this, we're going to be ignoring the pot itself. If you want to go down that path, that's fine, but it's not going to change how we look at this. The voting will be, I'll get you, when you've bought your trees, to send a photo through the private group. And I haven't worked out how I'm going to correlate them all yet, but I'll basically do something with that. And then once we've finished the process, we'll get your finished tree, and we'll get the big group, the Australian Bonsai Beginners group, basically to give thumbs up, love type of thing. And the one that gets the most votes, the judges are then going to go through the 10 top voted, and from that we'll choose a winner, or depending on if we've got a few more prizes at that point donated, several winners. So it's purely on the tree shape, where we're not looking at pots or anything like that. So we're going to try and just get you shaping your tree up, and at a later date you can put it into a nice pot if you want. We will talk about at one point pruning roots and things like that, which is what you do to downsize the pot, but purely for an educational purpose. It's not going to be necessarily what you should do at this stage. Okay, so going away from this week, we want you to go out and find yourself a plant that you want to work with, or multiple if you want to work with multiple. Get yourself a second pot. It can be one that you've got lying around in the garden. This is what we're going to split pot into. So we'll take you from your smaller pot up to a bigger pot. So 200 mil is the next common size up. So I think that one is a 200. This one is a 140. Can't really see them side by side there, but we'll basically slide out of one pot into the next and fill with some soil. So we'll need you to acquire a pot from somewhere. If it's a bit bigger, it doesn't matter. You don't want to go hugely bigger, because often that means the water won't sit so much around the roots where you want. It'll sort of get pulled away, but bigger than that is okay. You're going to need yourself some potting mix. There's a good chance you'll have some around home already, but just get a reasonable quality potting mix. It doesn't need to be much, because it's literally for the size difference of the pots. So we're only talking maybe half a litre or so. And for the base, you just want a little bit of gravel or something similar, so we can make sure your pot drains well. One of the killers of bonsais, and it's not such an issue in these pots at this stage, but it's wet feet, wet roots. So we want to make sure that that moisture flows through reasonably quickly. So the potting mix that we'll use at this stage is just normal potting mix that you'd use for any plant, which will retain quite a lot of water. And then once it gets to the bottom, we just want it to drain freely. So this will get it going through the summer. Once we get to a proper pot, we'll look at talking about different potting mixes specifically for bonsai, which drain a lot more freely, and fertilizers and things like that. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to go through, which you don't need to worry about yet, but just some of the tools that you may want to prepare yourself with. So you don't need anything special for this. The things you're going to need is a pair of scissors that have a fairly fine point on them. So these are actually scissors that I used to own a paper craft shop that we used in paper craft. Very sharp, very nice point, so we can get right into the plant and prune easily. So you want a pair of them. You've probably already got some secateurs, but you need something for slightly heavier branches depending on your tree. And my pen's off my desk. Moving further forward, you are going to want some wire, which I'm actually going to list some wire. I've got a heap here, so I'm happy to post some out if people want to grab some from me. But you'll want some wire of a couple of gauges and some sort of side cutters, which might be on your pliers to chop it, and possibly, not essentially, the pliers to bend it. That is really all you're going to need. So your key two things are your scissors, which you may have something that suits, and some secateurs. if you really want to get into it down the track, you definitely will want to get concave cutters eventually. That's the tool I use the most when I'm pruning now. They're specifically shaped so when you chop a branch, when it grows the bark back over it, it's got a hollow, so it cuts into it nicely and heals a bit better than just a straight flush cut. But yeah, so get yourself those couple of tools, the scissors and the secateurs, and that is all we're going to need to get you going. And obviously the plastic tub and the plant itself. So, okay, does anyone have any questions on what we need to do to move forward?
I'm good.
Sorry, I can't hear. What was that?
I'm good to go.
Okay.
Tim, would you have any suggestions of, I know a lot of us are in Adelaide or similar, any suggestions of some place that would be ideal to find some Australian natives?
Two places I can guarantee. If you're sort of south, Belair National Park, the nursery inside there, if you go to the entrance of the national park and tell them you're going to the nursery, you'll get free entry. They'll just pass you through and just follow the signs up to the back. When I was there last week, I've got to say the stocks were a little depleted at the moment. The other one, which I haven't been to recently, is up at Cleland National Park. I'm not I think there's a completely separate entrance for their nursery. But both of them, all they deal in is Australian natives. Obviously, your Bunnings and so on will have sections on it. And I do buy plants from Bunnings, just don't buy bonsais from them because they're normally in bad health and very expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, pretty much any plant nursery will definitely have some. It's just a matter of, what's close to you, having a shop around, and trying to go through those sorts of things of trying to see something that's already got a bit of branch movement in the lower branches. Yeah, so, I mean, we're not going to create masterpieces in 3 months here. We're just going to get started and hopefully spur you on to keep on going and go crazy and buy lots and lots of plants like I have.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
But yeah, Belair National Park, Cleveland National Park, or pretty much any nursery will have some, but those two, yeah, definitely you'll find heaps. Okay.
No worries.
Anyone else?
With the soil, does it matter if it's Australian native? I know you said it didn't matter, but is it better to go Australian native if I've already got that on hand, or?
It's fine to use that, but look, pretty much any soil, we just want something that has a little bit of nutrient and that will keep the moisture going so that the roots will push out into it. We can add fertilizer if it's a really cheap and nasty soil or something old even. But yeah, we're basically just looking for something to get those roots pushing out a bit further, start the thickening up process of the branches. So it's not critical. You could go and buy any potting mix off the shelf and it will work. If you could get a premium that's got a bit more nutrients, you're probably a little bit better off, but we're not going to be doing a big bare root and repot or anything. So it's not that significant at this stage. Okay.
Thank you.
Also, Tim, you said we were going to send through the pictures to you. Are you going to post on the Facebook when we send it through to you, or should we just do it as soon as we can? Or
just before we start next week, if you can grab a photo of what you're working with, that would be great. So I'll just correlate them initially, and yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to do that stage, but I'll work something out.
Can we send that through personal message, Tim?
Either personal or on the page. Either way, I'll pick it up. It's up to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, basically the private page, feel free to throw whatever you want up in there and ask questions and chat, whatever. It's our group. It's not restricted to me talking to you. It's for everyone. Yeah, so basically, yeah, throw them through and we'll work from there.
no worries.
So I can see Anna's iPad is definitely not Anna now that I've got a face up there.
No,
who have I got there?
that's Luke. It's Luke.
Okay, Luke. All right, not a problem. All right, anyone else want to ask?
The next session, is it Saturday or Friday?
They're
Sorry.
all on Saturdays from now
Yeah,
on.
no, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm back at
everything will be
work,
on
so
a
that's
Saturday.
good. That works well.
Yeah, it was
Fantastic.
only starting on first of the year, so yeah. And they'll all be recorded, so if you can't make it, it's not life and death. You can always ask questions after in the chat. Yeah, okay.
Fantastic. No, that's good. Thanks for doing this. This is awesome.
No problems.
Do you have any recommendations of what plants would be something good to start with? Like what types of natives?
I'm not really good on species. Like, I don't even know what half of my own plants are, to be honest. Something that has a fairly good spread is probably what I'd be looking at, that will try and grow out bushy. So the heights is obviously one that I've talked about.
Claret tops is a good starter if you can find them.
What was that one?
Or lapdog.
Claret tops, the Melaleuca
Melaleucas, yeah.
linearifolia.
A lot of people do Melaleucas.
They're robust. You can't kill them. You can sit them in a bit of water as well in the bottom of a tray so they don't dry out.
Yep.
And they're bulletproof and they look pretty good pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they've got a fairly rustic looking trunk too, I think. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Same with the Leptospermum. Their branches are brittle, but they do look nice when they're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've of all of my plants, I ask people what they are, and then I forget to write it down, and I forget. So I'm not so good on that side of things, but it's really only when it comes to fertilizing things, in my perspective, that and when to prune, it makes a huge difference. I've just been going on gut feel at this stage with that, but I know there's other people in the main group who can answer those questions a lot better than I can. So it would be worth just posting questions up in the main group. There's some people in there who are really, really good on Australian natives. Then there's other people who are particularly good on different species and fertilizing and things like that. So the main group, we've got a lot of experience in there. So yeah, if you're not sure, I would just go in and look around myself. Well, I'll give you an example of one I chose that was a bad choice. I went to a Mitre 10 local to me and bought a, I'm trying to think what it was called, a fairy lights. I can't think if it was even an Australian native, but I bought the plant just based on looks, got it home, and then found out that it had a relatively short lifespan, which obviously isn't suitable for what we're doing here. So it's good to know that it is something that's going to have a long lifespan. I know some Australian native, more so in the shrubs, but they don't live forever. They've got a, we're talking years still, but a shorter lifespan. So that could be something to look at. But again, as a beginner, it's probably not so critical. It's just getting used to what we're doing and how to make a tree start off, be healthy, and get some shape happening.
If there's anyone in Brisbane, there's Nielsen's Native Nursery on the south side in Loganholme.
Okay.
I don't know where everyone's from, but that's not a bad place to have a look.
There's a few from up in Queensland. It looks like we've got a lot from Adelaide, but I know from all across Australia we've got a bit of a mix.
Yeah.
All right, well, I might wind it up then. I said that we're going to try and keep it to below 30 minutes, which we've already shot over. In fact, the session's likely to stop anyway. All right, so guys, it's good to see you all, and go out and grab yourself some plants, ask questions, and I'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Tim.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks,
See ya.
Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank
Mate,
you.
good stuff.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks.